Hello and welcome. It's Jason and Zach with RTB Technologies. And today we want to talk about how work has evolved, right? So think about where your work actually happens today. Whether we're talking about email, Microsoft 365, Salesforce, banking, payroll, AI. What's everything got in common? Well, it all lives in one application, which is your browser. So everything that you do, or at least most things now, are on that browser application. And so we used to think about protecting the computer, but since the work has shifted, so has the targets for attackers to go after. So Zach, let's get into this a little bit more and talk about this.
Yeah. So first, let's kind of go back into what it used to be. Attackers used to attack trying to find out your username, trying to find out your password, right? Because if they had your username and password, they can then get into some of the other applications or the things you were doing in your files, your computer. Because a lot of people kept files on their computer. Everything was done on the machine, on the endpoint. Well, now that's kind of shifted, like you were saying, Jason, with the rise of SaaS or software as a service, as well as AI and other things, and just the way workflows are done now, that's all pushed up into the browser. So the browser is the new endpoint. It is the new system that everyone is using in order to perform all their functions for work, right? So they're not going after your password or your username because they don't care about that anymore. What they do care about is getting access to your user. So what that means now in today's terms is session stealing, token stealing, being able to pull anything that you're doing in that browser rather than gaining access to your password. So a lot of the times these attacks and these business email compromises and things don't even have your password because they don't care. They don't need it. They just go after your session and that's how they get into your files and things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense in terms of the sessions, and it makes me think of an analogy. Think about if you're going to a concert or a particular bar or club or something, and you show your ID to get in, or you show your tickets to get in, they give you a wristband. And that wristband now shows that you have gone through security and you're allowed into the concert or the bar. And you can walk around freely because you've already accomplished that. Well, what happens if you give that wristband to somebody else or somebody steals it from you and starts to wear it? Well, now they have the same access you do without having to show their ID or go through security. I thought that analogy paints a picture pretty well on what's going on with session stealing.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is, right? Because you're already a vetted person because you have a wristband, right? You paid to get in. They know who you are. You put your information in, whatever. So if you give that wristband to someone else or someone steals that wristband, then they assume your identity essentially. So that's a great analogy. So let's kind of pivot now and talk about what you can focus on as an organization to kind of combat some of this, right? And a lot of the things are things we've already talked about previously, but MFA, so multi-factor authentication, making sure that you are authenticating someone with multiple forms so that it's not just the wristband, right? Well, do they have another piece of information about you? Do they know your name? Which they probably will, as a good attacker does. But cell phones, cell phone text messages, those rotating passwords, rotating random number generators, like anything like that is MFA. Conditional access. This one's a good one that we've seen a lot implemented a lot more, specifically with geolocation. Because if your company is based in, let's just say, Colorado, where we are, if someone's trying to log in from, another country, then you're like, wait a minute, that shouldn't happen. We don't need that. So what you do is you geolocate and you have a geofence around your conditional access there. That's just one example. Device compliance, making sure all your devices are compliant. This goes a little bit further because one of the big deals with the new form of attacking is browser extensions, right? A lot of people, they'll go in, they'll be like, cool, Google's telling me I can do this browser extension. It'll help me do, I don't know, buy something or password or whatever. Most of us just click on that with no thoughts and like, yeah, let's do it. I don't care. It's fine. It's being pushed to me via Google or pick whatever, and we don't think about it. Well, unknowingly, you're allowing that extension access to your entire browser, to where you're going, to your passwords, anything you have stored in your browser, any browser cached data. So these are things that you need to pay attention to and come up with a compliant way to do this. And then risk-based authentication. So this is more so kind of like conditional access, where if you have someone in finance, you don't want that person into all your client details, or vice versa. Someone who's a frontline worker, you don't want them into your financials, etc. So that's kind of the way that we go this. And like, we're not saying that traditional security isn't enough or traditional controls need to be neglected, because you can still get into all these things as an attacker via the endpoint or computer, the physical machine. We're just saying that now you have to add another layer on top of that in order to protect where you actually do your workflows, right? So because we're taking care of the traditional portions, that's why it's been bumped up to the workflows that are in SaaS, that are in your browser. And they're
Yeah,
no longer sufficient by themselves.
sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, you definitely hit on a few very important points there. I mean, the browser extensions, if you were to look at, the kind of permissions that they have, you can see what they have access to. And, there was some research done recently where some researchers looked at, the Google store, or the Apple store, Microsoft store, and people tend to think, hey, if it's being sold in the store, it must be legit, but that's not always the case, and then you start looking at the permissions that they have access to. It's very easy for an attacker to take advantage of that. And another thing that we're seeing also is, say you're already working on your browser, you're on a website, and you go somewhere and it wants you to authenticate yourself, right? And so people are used to doing that, and so they don't give it any second thought. It's okay, well, let's authenticate ourselves. Need you verify, your password or whatever. And then it might say, something along the lines of, there's been a problem, something didn't work right. And then it'll come up with a pop-up with very helpful instruction. Well, to fix this, all you got to do is, press, Control R, and then the window pops up, and then it says, all you got to do is put your mouse in that window and press Control V, and then enter. And so the user's thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to follow these instructions because they seem very helpful. But what ended up happening is that some attackers now are having scripts run in the background. Whenever you click on that, that'll copy something to your clipboard. So what's actually happening is that you are then pasting something into a run command, which is oftentimes malicious. So that's one of the things to look out for. So Zach, anything else to wrap up this session with today?
Yeah, so again, I want to we focused a lot on technology today, but it all comes down to the user. It comes down to how much the user's trained, how much the user knows. And if organizations are not training their users about these types of threats and what to look out for, then it doesn't matter what technical um, safeguards you put in place, they're not going to work. So I'd like to kind of leave here with some thoughts as far as like future prediction type things, right? So a couple of years ago, it was how secure is our endpoints, right? We talk about that. We talk about how secure are the computers, are the physical devices, things like that. Today, they're asking how secure are our identities, as in the users, the user accounts, your accounts on your SaaS. But tomorrow, they're probably going to be asking how secure is a browser session that's managing things like our AI agents. We didn't even talk about AI, and I'm not going to go into it because we're wrapping up, but there a lot of this is also in the AI space as well, with some of the issues that are coming out about the large language models and what they're capable of doing even with guardrails. So these are the questions that as professionals and companies, organizations, we need to be thinking about in order to prepare ourselves to be combative against threats in the coming.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and there's so many different directions we can take this conversation, so many different topics to discuss. So if you have any questions out there, please let us know, or any topics you'd like us to specifically discuss. We'd love to hear from you as well. So with that, I hope everybody stays safe out there, stay vigilant, and we'll see you next time.